My name's Claire Smith. I'm a Senior Policy Officer working on bird flu for RSPB, and today we're at sunny Fellsheugh in North East Scotland. We're here at the end of January, so there's a few fulmars, a few herring gulls around. We're not quite yet seeing all of the sort of raisbills and guillemots rafting on the sea, so not much is back on the cliff, so it's fairly quiet. But as we move into February, you'll start seeing more birds out at sea. Over the last couple of months in Scotland and the whole of the UK, things have been a lot quieter, so the quietest they've been since this current outbreak started in 2021. So just really a handful of wild bird cases over the last couple of months. We've not had a positive test in wild birds since November in Scotland, and there are still some outbreaks in southeast England in wild birds. However, we do need to keep looking at it globally. Bird flu reached Antarctica over the last couple of months, so we're hearing about a lot of outbreaks there. And on mainland Europe, there's still a lot of bird flu in the east of mainland Europe, so it hit common cranes quite badly and also mute swans. So we'll still be keeping an eye on when some birds are coming back in March, when things like black-headed gulls are coming back in March and could bring the virus with them. Last year, in 2023, RSPB, working with a lot of organisations, carried out an updated survey of important populations of some of the birds that were hit by bird flu. And that was because in 2021 we'd just finished a 6-year survey of updating all the counts of seabirds across the UK. But of course that finished just before bird flu, so we needed to update that to understand some of the impacts of bird flu. The two things that are really jumping out are the impacts on gannets and great skewers, also known as bonxies, because they were the two species in the last big seabird census that had actually been increasing. So compared to the rest of the 23 that had all been long-term declines, these are two that were the glimmers of hope and that were increasing across the UK. Also really important because we've got globally important proportions of those populations. But unfortunately, bird flu hit. We knew from the numbers of dead birds we were seeing that we thought the impacts were bad, but they were actually far worse than we had anticipated. So for great skewers, we've probably lost 3/4 of the breeding population to bird flu, and that's really important because we've got 60% of the world population. And I think for people working on these birds, because often when people work on seabirds, they'll be working on one individual colony or an island, and they might have worked there for years and years and years. And to see that, pulled across the whole population and think, oh, it's not just my island, it's everywhere that this is happening, is really, it's just really, really devastating, I think, for people to realise that and realise just the sheer numbers of birds that have been lost. Seabirds are a group of species that have been declining for a long time, over decades and decades. And there's a whole mixture of reasons and a whole mix of pressures that are already there. Offshore renewables, we do need that to tackle the climate crisis, but they need to be really carefully sited and making sure that they're not impacting on some of the species that they should also be trying to save. The food sources are impacted by, by global warming and changes in climate, which means that food species either move or their timings are out of sync. We've got loads of other human-induced pressures, so coastal development, bycatch. We think of bycatch as being something that happens in countries outside of the UK, but it happens here as well, where birds are getting tangled in fishing gear. And there's lots of practical solutions that can be made to address that. Also island restoration programmes, so a lot of our islands have got non-native predators on them, which are killing, taking eggs and chicks. So we need really good funding to carry out that island restoration work, and also to keep those islands predator-free. Seabirds are hugely important for Scotland and the UK. Scotland in particular, because we've just got internationally important populations. You know, they're so evocative, the sights and the sounds. So we really feels like we've got a lot of people feeling really connected to seabirds, having a real understanding of the beauty and the experience of being in a colony. And it just feels like it would be such a shame if we weren't able to save these species.